근데 아니 다바지 녜샤데 그런 참아 순사위도 상 녜샤데 바지 아니 거진제 된 두지시 슈가 되지 임바자.
The way I feel right now is that all of the other speakers have said exactly what I wanted to say. And it seems that the only thing left for me to say is to thank you all for your kindness.
지전에 나란단 대회 스토리는 주제 안에 거진제 된 소화된 전구유서.
That's all. But maybe in the spirit of appreciating the kindness of you all, I could share with you a little story about myself.
나한테서 상물을 랭게 상물도 민자외 안에 구유제 나로래야 상로 충분히 차디야. 나 중두 안에 바지 나 깨바네 정신 기능주 상으로 지금 오만의 저리체 상으로지 나 통도스 안에 들이 뉴상아 중두 안에 샘 나로래야 템퍼지랴 그 중두네 돌로마도 교인데비치 나 정도스 상면지 가수에 지 가수에 지 자치로 쓰대야지 정도스.
That's all. From the time I was very young onward, I was given a lot of different responsibilities. And it always seemed to me when I was young that everything was laid out before me. All of the plans for me were already made. I was given the clothes that I needed to wear and told where I needed to be, given these very precious and holy-looking robes to wear with the understanding that it was something sacred or important.
나로 듄이야 내외 걸이야 and searching group Karmapa 쟁게 그래서 아직 그룹 실례브래 고슬래제네 근데 얘들 이제 바제 아바다 아무 고스 계시입니다 쟤네 근데 교랑 까마버렸어 남사 공발이 안 들어오랬어 근데 미마우증 알아야 계절진이 온데도 급디두산은 교랑이야 초와 컨트롤 중스 컨트롤이 까마버렸어 두산 컨트롤 초와 중스 그래서 초와스 게임도 까마버렸어 두산 지잖아 지怎么 먹어야 봐 가보시다 유기를 sometimes.
But before that kind of formal lifestyle happened for me, I was living in eastern Tibet with my family, and when I was 7 years old, all of a sudden, a search party arrived at my home. They were looking for the next Karmapa, and I noticed they were talking to my mom and dad, and the news came to me that they were telling me that I was the Karmapa. And these days, people ask me a lot, how did that feel? How did that feel when they came and whisked you away and your lifestyle completely changed? And what I mostly say is that at that time, it was a pretty interesting idea to me. I thought that things would be pretty fun and there would be more things to play with.
이미네 니주도 원에 전에다 리차요 말았어. 나 까마버 차이 두사는 걸리 가수에 소수에게 보유 네 카테제 아니 파마다 카테제 아니 아장기다 트래디셔널 가수다 루스 수균기다 루스 담보에 대비 공변 나노 직수직 나노야 대체 아장기다 적부 아주 미지당부는 시체는 적부이나 두레미야 딱 간다 그게 가수다 스트레주는 시 아주 배게 계시하다 배 스트레주는 시 대오레스 드리스가 왔다 군전은 시바 대오레스고 제자 다 드리시 두산에 섬려야 아니 까마버스 두산에 지 긴구르여 버지당 아다나시 까마버치야데 레라고 민비치 수수의 파마다 카테 다나시 망부치 려동고요 현수.
But it didn't turn out to be so fun and entertaining as I thought it would have been. I was placed in a pretty strictly controlled environment, and immediately a lot of different responsibilities in terms of my education and so forth were heaped upon me. I was separated largely from my family, including my mother and father. I didn't have many personal friends to spend time with, but I was expected to perform these prescribed duties. So it turned out that my fantasy about an entertaining life of being the Karmapa wasn't going to come true. It more felt to be the case to me that I was being treated like a statue, and I was to sit in one place like a statue would.
Okay. 다 인비네야. 가서에 지 밤에 자와당 다나시 생기 자와디 텔레 카체웨 삼바르게 용문도스. Even 베니스 and 로주시 순백거리야 and 베니스 페브레 두사나네 수수 방만도 뷰지에다 안다나시 다 저보다 보유의 상물로 그게 장정불이야下去 표현을 당동이네 고주다 자와예와 당 에너지 고주 가수다 거딩기 지더버데 섬리아 예버치 초도스.
Nevertheless, I felt that even though I've been separated from my loved ones, and of course now I'm even further away. When I was 14, I escaped from Tibet and became even further removed from my mother and father, my relatives, my friends, and my homeland. But nevertheless, there's no real sense of separation from me in my heart in terms of the love that I feel for these people. I feel still a very strong connection of love for all of these people and for the land.
삼성에 아말라리아 가왔던요. 가왔던 주사네. 에네 가바당 신비기 답에 second 리리리아 수수디 자와촌 가수 제외 뉴버디 다른 분을 줄레게 여버집지다. 에네디 가수 당동이네 셈리아 지 바자 딘사부 연구협지 통도스.
And I still do get to keep in touch with my mother and father, albeit infrequently. I talk to my mother once in a blue moon on the telephone. And my experience is that when I'm talking to her, with every second that passes during our conversation, the feeling of love that binds us is bringing us closer and closer together.
나딩에 루유르치레 드링에 대 가르쳐 섬르스나 땅앙 소아르치레게 다 다대진 좀불린디 아니 뇌베 야게 시란 주요하래 아니 다나신 좀불린디 아주 빈수 벤다 테드는 시체네 빈수 미망고지 내야 도제는 가르쳐 돈좀 채하다 안 적봉 것이 자기 고급 망도망도 주요하래 아시다가 예스 이비네야 아주기 에너지 치기 넘규르당 치기 야게 점메바 아주 도난 채과지 섬리야 마제베 채과데 가르스나 지기데 예섬리야 아주 낭심기 에는 제바당 라버도 아주 베네트 the design of chiabi bine azu sem design ya tonan che kwa dana shin benaji technology of bine sem technology de ya tonan che kwa de sida khe chum do song dos.
So those were just a few remarks about my personal background. And in terms of other things that I wanted to share with you in terms of ideas, I think it's wonderful to have a situation like this where so many people from different backgrounds and places can come together, exchange their ideas, and form relationships of friendship with each other. And I think that's symbolic of what we're seeing in the world in general, that the world is becoming smaller and smaller, and that all of the peoples in the world are enjoying more opportunities for connection. That's wonderful, but we should also remember that we should have a similar process happening on the inside. Along with outward development and increase of opportunity, there should be inward development and deepening of our heart connections as well as our outward connections. So we spoke and we heard some about design this week. I think that it's important for us to remember that we need to keep pushing forward on the endeavor of the design of the heart. We heard a lot about technology this week, and it's important for us to remember to invest a lot of our energy in improving the technology of the heart.
这当我从了2年多做各个帮不出中国的，这不能重重重要的，因为很多我就是生活哪里啊，平时生态你不起来呀，怕都绝不钱给，值不得钱给，这个忙不也不错东西。
That's so. So even though I'm somewhat happy about the wonderful developments that are happening in the world, still I feel a sense of impediment when it comes to the ability that we have to connect with each other on a heart-to-heart or a mind-to-mind level. I feel that there are some things that are getting in the way.
这当我对于米西达利亚这不是对啥呢？生理啊，人对这不起，不是这当我 position 的，你我嘛不也在开始 intelligent， 结果的是，嘛都就让人家要的生对用的都，看到呀，看到生的这不起这个意思。但这对啥呢？不天气凉啊，阿富汗斯坦的用给呢 group 去投不来，
That's so.
各种啊都给穷。
That's so. My relationship to this concept of heart-to-heart connection or mind-to-mind connection is an interesting one, because as a spiritual leader, I'm always attempting to open my heart to others and offer myself up for heart-to-heart and mind-to-mind connections in a genuine way with other people. But at the same time, I've always been advised that I need to emphasize intelligence over the heart-to-heart connections, because being someone in a position like mine, if I don't rely primarily on intelligence, then something dangerous may happen to me. So it's an interesting paradox at play there. But I had a really striking experience once when a group from Afghanistan came to visit me, and we had a really interesting conversation.
我就第一个来给穷的，不然人不得嘛噻，
That's so.
不得去吧，多不得去吧，
That's so.
我是第一个来给穷的。就是啥呢？我给草原拿了粮，这当给那不能穆斯林去路里边呢，那就 mix 哎，搞出工作是该要嘛吧？
That's
这个是该要嘛吧？
that's
那工作的，但叔叔么这不是知道吧？
no.
但是的南边的，那叔叔这边的搞出的，东北这里啊，提供起要的。但因为呢，这些边呢，的我做的的上个工作多少的，我做的人民龙嘛的强制不住吧？
No.
搞是不能，搞是我什么事？
Mhm.
但那些钱，但多了的呢，之前我做平时穆斯林的，当然是。 南部平时我那真的这个三五同样这里啊，但这不但都强都钱的，这到了的呢三五同样这，热瓦要的是，
That's so.
这些边是，
Mhm.
这里都上眼什么了？可对一边呢，啊就是什么了啊？一切恰当，一切恰的，开启学的呢，推敲 positive，
That's so.
这个团呢啊是热瓦恰当，什么了啊？这里啊，呢。
That's so. Mhm. So we ended up talking about the Bamiyan Buddhas, which, as you know, were destroyed some years ago in Afghanistan. But the basis of our conversation was a different approach to spirituality on the part of the Muslim and Buddhist traditions. Of course, in Muslim, because of the teachings around the concept of idolatry, you don't find as many physical representations of divinity or of spiritual liberation as you do in the Buddhist tradition, where, of course, there are many statues of the Buddha that are highly revered. So we were talking about the differences between the traditions, and what many people perceived as the tragedy of the destruction of the Bamiyan Buddhas. But I offered the suggestion that perhaps we could look at this in a positive way. What we saw in the destruction of the Bamiyan Buddhas was the depletion of matter, some solid substance falling down and disintegrating. Maybe we could look at that to be more similar to the falling of the Berlin Wall, where a divide that had kept two types of people apart had collapsed and opened up a door for further communication. So I think that in this way, it's always possible for us to derive something positive that can help us understand one another better.
Today in Lusana, and I draw me, yeah, and it's some Jew, Namju, I would ask to Kashu, we I get out of Gidaji, Kashu, the Zambulin Deliabe, Kashu, Kurda, Jibumimba, Azuji, Deta, you have a Maon Bashidang, and then draw Tamzilia, Gunyumgi, and then Kashu, that Zambuli Juntuag, Bezuchawati, as the Miss Samju Jenki. That language over but
So, with regard to the development that we've been talking about here at this conference, I really feel that the development that we make shouldn't create a further burden for us as human beings, but should be used to improve our fundamental lifestyle of how we live in the world.
Bena design gave moment been a jan of G but should I guess down to order? Should I have orders? That you mean to some time where the Yaji is sympathy, Suegi, Archer or Sana, so the natural resources that day, Mambuchi Pigeon to Yavati. Then do Sane, Azu Zawa, Porni, Zemolia, and Julia Mabchi. That is in Beijing. The need to San Azu the sincere motivations are. That day, last some number gone, as you need to cashe, as you sing your mare. Even need to cashe, she be near, as you told her, Delia, Tonama Jebi, needs to stammer Chadi, Benacasan, Bena Casue, that's the Muni Tolia, Pume Mambuchi, Casue, Gange, the Tunge, Neta Mambuchina, Cadavity, me Mambu sing your the Imbine. Delia, Laxam Namda, Gun and Lane, G. Carshue, so ba, Donia, Chonji, Rangi, Kurlana, G. The day get mab. The need to start the marriage then Dene, and Chorgin and Zoblindi, Yagan to your Chorgine, and Zawati, Karshueta, never. Zawat Tushi do you. They do stand the look when you maybe needs to chat yours, balance maybe. Of course, I rejoice in the development and the growth and the rise of the noble land of India, the great country of India. But at the same time, I think, as some of us have acknowledged, we need to be aware that some aspects of this rise are coming at the cost of the very ground on which we stand. So as we are climbing the tree, some of the things that we're doing in order to climb the tree are actually undermining the tree's very root. And so what I think it comes down to is a question of not only having information of what's going on, but paying attention to that and letting that shift our motivation to become more sincere and genuinely positive. We have heard this week about the horrible sufferings, for example, that so many women of the world are enduring day to day. We have that information, but what often happens to us is that we don't really choose to pay attention to it. We don't really choose to allow that to cause there to be a shift in our heart. So I think the way forward for the world, one that will bring the path of outer development in harmony with the real root of happiness, is that we
allow the information that we have to really make a change in our heart.
Tene Lusane, a주 happiness, digi saadi, a주 아주 비 자천부 benede, a주 모르 지부르체, 안다는 감부 지부르체, 차견 야부르지여비나, and happiness, 요아데 칼하우샤데. So the digi 자와데, 아주지 랑기 셈, 셈리아, 아니, 아주지 sincere motivation. 근데 다 간다. 다데 에너지 나와 가르는 게 외빈에 들량 아주 에너지 가수에 띵사별관에 좋아래야다 아니 들량 가수지 셈냠을 좋아하디 개춤시다 차디 알아성도스.
So I think this sincere motivation is very important for our future well-being, our deep sense of well-being as humans. And I think that means sinking in to whatever it is you're doing now. Whatever work you're trying to do now to benefit the world, sink into that. Get a full taste of that.
Today, this andari nima kashi rinlia azu de TED conference soji. Di nalo liang azu wuki gyua dongcha mangbu qin ya res. Ada kashi azu gyua changmo dezulia not pay attention ge omares. 아주 그뒤 이면에 디지스아르베 처음으로 지당베 impressive 되려지 권한을 샤디 알았어. 오늘 제비 이미나 아니 디지데 아주 우기교와 참무 춘지에네 영원되버지버디.
나서.
시도 알았어.
So since we've been here this week, we've taken millions of breaths collectively, and perhaps we haven't witnessed any course changes happening in our lives. We often miss the very subtle changes, and I think that sometimes we develop grand concepts of what happiness might look like for us, but that if we pay attention, we can see that there are little symbols of happiness in every breath that we take.
대야 누좀 체베 디 가수다 가주디 아주 가수지 수수 차시 르르려야 캡투가 지다 안다나시 내는 유에데베다 창로 오늘 가수지 라섬 유에데베다 참지 유에데베다 다나시 에네베 시라기 지신유 다 안에 남주 친구 유에데베 경경패 어디 두상 아주다 단제기 수수기 토리아다 가서 개바 삼벽 또는 딘데지 라도 번 가서 다 덴드비 차견 삼부지 라도 련버디 아주 점불린다 마음배 체도 아니 소소리게 피네 안다지 소소기 아니 참바다 자와디 아니 무투에지 점불린이야 치시바 네트에 아니 가서 나로나 맞아 답았어
맞아. So every one of you who has come here is so talented, and you have so much to offer to the world. I think it would be a good note to conclude on then, to just take a moment to appreciate how fortunate we are to have come together in this way and exchanged ideas, and really form a strong aspiration and energy within ourselves that we will take the good that has come from this conference, the momentum, the positivity, and we will spread that and plant it in all of the corners of the world.
아니 다리데 럭치미 아주 공개 가수에 시락 배주 제정한데야 깨담 제가 시락 가보죠 가서 담고 대스야 아니 르부데 버샤미도 참바르 보듯이 아니 미주랑 가르 참바 봐야 김선 가르스 Tomorrow is my talk. 재산. 들으시라이. 재산 간다 공시나 배주 채부터 시작 가오중 안데 영화대 정말로 도야대 공기 거리는 데는 정말 재산이 이다만 두제나 셔인스.
Lakshmi has worked incredibly hard even in inviting me, let alone everything else that she has done to make this happen. And I was somewhat resistant at times. And I was also very nervous throughout this week. I was feeling under the weather and dizzy and so forth, and people would ask me why. I would tell them it's because I have to talk tomorrow. So Lakshmi had to put up with me through all of that, but I very much appreciate the opportunity she's given me to be here.
네, 사모로 두세.
And
Thank you.
to you, everyone, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Somewhere in America, there's a doctor who can peer into the future. There's a nurse who can access in an instant every patient's past. And because the whole hospital's working together, there's a family who can breathe easy right now. Somewhere in America, we've already answered some of the nation's toughest healthcare questions. And the over 60,000 people of Siemens are ready to do it again. Siemens answers.